My second pick for favorite gaming franchise would be the Star Ocean series, now owned by Square Enix. By the end of the late 90s in the Philippines, the PlayStation 1 was the console to have and play, ahead of the consoles that Nintendo and Sega released. Around this time, I just want more JRPGs to play. And fortunately, one of my high school classmates and close friends was also a gamer. He liked JRPGs as well. He said Star Ocean for the PlayStation 1 was one of the best games he had ever played on the console. The game he introduced me was called Star Ocean The Second Story, and just like my friend, I was hooked right away. I played Star Ocean The Second Story for the PlayStation 1. Then I was curious on the first Star Ocean for the Super Famicom. So I downloaded the fan translated version of that and played that on a Super Nintendo emulator. Then I played Star Ocean till the end of time on the PS2. Then I played Star Ocean The Last Hope on the PlayStation 3. And then I played Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness on the PlayStation 4. I have yet to play Star Ocean, The Divine Force on the PS5 though. One pet peeve of mine in regards to the Star Ocean series is how Square Enix decided to name each game. Rather than the traditional way of naming them by sequential numbers, they chose the Star Wars route, perhaps to definitively differentiate each one game from the others. Naming sense aside, the Star Ocean franchise to me is the next best thing for fans of Fantasy Star could ever hope for. And as far as having a fantasy sci fi JRPG out there right now, especially that Fantasy Star hardly shows any signs of making a big comeback anyway. For the most part of the JRPGs of the 90s that I discovered back then, the gameplay has always been turn based combat. This was true for early games of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Fantasy Star, Breath of Fire, Wild Arms, Suikoden, and such. Star Ocean, at least for the first three games. When you encounter an enemy, the game transitions, then takes you in a open field based on your location in the map, and your characters must run towards the enemy so you can attack them within the range of your melee and magic. The earlier gameplay of Star Ocean somewhat resembles the Tales of games, being an action RPG as far as combat style is concerned. In the latest Star Ocean games, if you see an enemy lurking around the map, you just engage them. No more battle transitions necessary. Star Ocean series to me picked up where Fantasy Star left off when it comes to fantasy sci-fi JRPGs, like I mentioned earlier. Interplanetary travels, using magic spells along with technological weapons to fight enemies, meeting with different alien races, which oddly enough are predominantly humanoid in appearances. In fact, the more I think about it, some characters of Star Ocean The Last Hope remind me of some characters from Fantasy Star 4. Oh, did I mention there are also character fan service here in this series? Yes, and but they are not as abundant as in the Tales franchise. Another similarity that I have observed in the Star Ocean series is that it also has its own dedicated musical theme and score. That when you hear certain sounds, you know it is a Star Ocean game. And it is a good trait of Star Ocean's identity as a franchise. In regards with the storytelling, the best way I can describe the overall writing is asking myself which Star Ocean game's plot I remembered the most. And by answering that exact question will bring me to my rating as well. I would say my top Star Ocean game is the second story, and then my bottom Star Ocean game would be the first game. Oh, that said, it has been years since the last time I played the original game, and that was the Super Famicom fan translated version on an emulator. And we're talking like 2 decades here since I last touched that game. So it does not necessarily mean it is that bad. I'm just saying I played the game, but it did not make a lasting impression inside my stupid head. As much as I like being a pervert, lusting over Fiore's seductive outfit in Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness, I hardly remember what the game was all about. Why? Because I'm too distracted looking at her all the time. With the second story, at least there are a lot more characters to choose from that you can experiment with, making things easier or more challenging for you. In terms of romance, the Star Ocean series is almost devoid of any relationships. The only game that comes to mind that really got me giggling like a schoolgirl is the pairing of FaZe and Limo in Star Ocean: The Last Hope. Yeah. I know there is some controversy behind that pairing, but the men of culture of Square Enix knew what they were doing, and I'm all for it.
Boo! What? 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 What are you doing?
What are you doing? Just suddenly jumping out like that?
What are you doing over here?
What are you doing over here?
A constant feature of the Star Ocean games are the private actions, which is kind of similar with the skits of the Tales games, with some notable differences. Private actions are character development events that are usually triggered when before going in and out of the towns or dungeons. Sometimes they can be triggered if certain conditions are met, like triggering another specific private action or acquiring or losing a specific character or item. Sometimes it can be triggered by doing a specific task. The private actions themselves dive more into the dynamics of the particular character that the main plot does not have time to explore. Not only that these private actions are optional, the player can easily miss the opportunity on doing them, just like the skits of the Tales games. However, unlike the Tales games, these private actions can alter some of the character endings for the better or for worse. By doing these private actions in turn warrants the replayability of the Star Ocean games, and especially for those who have completionist tendencies. A typical trope that role playing games is the abundant use of skills, whether they are battle skills, active skills, or passive skills. The Star Ocean series is one of the few JRPG franchises that are effectively utilizing this function. Skills are basically additional traits and abilities that characters can learn so that they can be more effective and efficient during combat or exploration. These skills can vary in effects that include, but not limited to, raising the health, magic capacity, attack, defense, accuracy, agility, item creation, item consumption, magic casting, and monster extermination. Another feature of the Star Ocean games is the item creation. By acquiring raw materials, the player has the opportunity to make consumable items, equipment, and certain key items which cannot be purchased from the stores or shops. Usually, the character must have the necessary skills to do the item creation, which can be divided into various vocations like mining, crafting, compounding, cooking, writing, or blacksmithing. The probability of a successful creation depends on how high is the mastery level of a particular vocation of the said character. Both private actions and item creation can lead all sorts of side quests, which add more to the overall narrative of the Star Ocean games.